There is a kind of intelligence the world doesn't encourage, not because it is false, but because it is dangerous. It doesn't make you a better worker in their system. It makes you a threat to it. Most people are trained, from the moment they can think, to avoid the darkness in themselves. They are told to seek only the light, the positive, the agreeable. The truth is, the light blinds as much as it illuminates. The darkness, however, teaches you to see. Dark intelligence is not about cruelty. It is about clarity. It is the ability to look at the parts of reality that polite society hides behind curtains of morality and comfort. It is the skill of reading the subtext, of hearing what is not said, of understanding motives that contradict words. With this intelligence, you can walk into a room and know who is lying. You can hear the melody of manipulation behind the symphony of smiles. You can watch people's actions and predict their next moves with eerie accuracy. But it comes at a price. You will no longer be able to take the world at face value. The innocence of just believing will be gone. You will see the games everywhere. Friends, family, leaders, lovers. You will see their strategies, their insecurities, their masks. And once you see the masks, you cannot pretend they are faces. This is why they fear people like you. Because once you awaken this kind of awareness, you can no longer be herded. Fear, guilt, flattery, all the tools of control, lose their hold. You become immune to the scripts that guide the masses. But remember, dark intelligence must be tempered. If you let it consume you, you become a cynic, a shadow of yourself. If you balance it, you become unstoppable. The path is not for everyone. Some would rather remain blind and comfortable. But if you choose it, if you dare to open your eyes in the dark, you will walk through this world with a power most will never understand. Dark intelligence is the power to see hidden motives and unspoken truths. It is not the kind of intelligence that earns you awards in a classroom or applause from a crowd. It is a quiet, almost invisible form of awareness that grows in the background of your mind, shaping the way you see the world without needing to announce itself. This intelligence does not shout, it whispers. It does not crave validation, it craves accuracy. It is the ability to look beyond the obvious, to penetrate the surface of what is presented to you, and to perceive the real intentions, fears, and desires hiding beneath a person's words or actions. To develop it, you must first learn to be suspicious of simplicity. Most truths in human interaction are not neat. They are layered, messy, and often contradictory. People rarely say exactly what they mean. They edit themselves based on what they think you want to hear, what benefits them, or what protects their own image. Dark intelligence teaches you to listen in between their words, to pay attention to the pauses, the hesitations, the slight inconsistencies that reveal more than any direct statement. You begin to hear the truth in the things people avoid mentioning. You begin to see patterns in their behavior that they themselves are unaware of. This intelligence requires a willingness to notice discomfort. Most avoid it because discomfort is unsettling. They don't want to believe that someone close to them might be hiding a resentment, an agenda, or a weakness. But if you wish to see reality, you must be willing to accept that people's motives are not always pure, even if their smiles are genuine. You start to realize that kindness can sometimes be a strategy, that generosity can be a form of investment, that silence can be louder than confession. The more you observe, the more you realize that the world runs not on open truth, but on a constant negotiation between what is shown and what is hidden. When you possess dark intelligence, your perception sharpens in ways others do not notice. You can sense when a compliment is loaded with an insult. You can feel when someone is acting out of obligation rather than genuine care. You can see when someone is positioning themselves for advantage while pretending to be selfless. The ability is almost like having a second sight. You don't just interact with people, you read them. You read their body language, the shift in their tone, the sudden change in pace when a topic gets too close to their vulnerability. You understand the mechanics of power in conversation. Who is trying to dominate, who is yielding, who is masking insecurity behind arrogance. This awareness often feels like stepping behind the curtain of a theater and watching the actors prepare for their roles. You begin to see how much of human interaction is performance. Every person has a public role and a private self, and most work tirelessly to keep the two aligned. It shows you the nervous glance before a lie, the quick overcompensation after a mistake, the excessive politeness that hides resentment. It's not just about reading individuals, it's also about reading situations. You learn to detect the currents of group dynamics, the unspoken alliances, the quiet rivalries, the power struggles hidden beneath polite cooperation. In a meeting, you see not just the agenda on paper, but the political games being played between the lines. In a family gathering, you notice which topics are carefully avoided and why. You realize that every space where humans interact is a negotiation of status, influence, and self-protection. The path to this level of awareness often starts with self-observation. You cannot clearly see others until you are willing to see yourself, your own motives, your own fears, your own ability to deceive and be deceived. Once you acknowledge the complexity within yourself, it becomes much easier to recognize it in others. You realize that lying is not always malicious. Sometimes it is survival. You realize that hiding emotions is not always manipulation. Sometimes it is protection. This understanding makes you less naive, but also less judgmental, because you no longer demand purity from people who are navigating a world that rarely rewards it. Dark intelligence thrives on patience. You don't rush to conclusions, you let patterns emerge. You watch how someone behaves when they think no one important is watching. You notice how their energy changes depending on who is in the room. You collect small pieces of information over time, never relying solely on a single moment or statement to define a person's truth. In this way, your accuracy grows sharper and your insights more reliable. It also requires detachment. If you are too emotionally entangled, you will see what you want to see instead of what is actually there. The more invested you are in someone's image, the harder it is to acknowledge their hidden motives. Dark intelligence demands that you hold your observations without letting your personal hopes distort them. You must learn to sit with the discomfort of knowing that people are more complicated than they appear, and that even those you care about can have layers you will never fully uncover. As you develop this skill, you begin to notice the economy of information, who shares, who withholds, and why. You learn that the way a person reveals something is as telling as the content itself. A confession given too easily might be a distraction from something deeper. A refusal to discuss a subject might be an admission in disguise. Every word, every silence, every gesture becomes a clue. Over time, you become fluent in the language of subtext. You can see the faint outlines of the thoughts people try to hide. You understand the difference between ignorance and intentional omission. You can tell when someone is pretending not to know something they clearly understand. This ability is not mystical. It is the result of consistent observation and the courage to look where others prefer not to. Once you have seen enough, you stop being surprised by human behavior. You stop expecting that everyone's intentions will align with their words. Instead, you accept that people are both honest and deceptive, both kind and self-serving, often within the same conversation. This acceptance frees you from the constant shock that others feel when someone shows their true colors. You know that those colors were always there, they were simply painted over with more socially acceptable shades. It is a quiet kind of power, one that does not need to be displayed. You do not need to expose every hidden motive you detect. Sometimes you keep your observations to yourself, allowing them to guide your decisions silently. You choose when to confront and when to simply adjust your expectations. You begin to navigate life with an awareness that shields you from many of the traps that ensnare those who take everything at face value. It also gives you the ability to anticipate outcomes before they unfold. Because you see the underlying motives, you can predict the likely actions that will follow. This foresight is not infallible, but it is often far more accurate than the guesses of those who ignore the hidden layers of interaction. You can sense when a relationship is shifting, when a negotiation is turning, when an opportunity is not as it seems. This predictive edge allows you to move strategically rather than reactively, to make choices that others do not yet realize are necessary. You become both a student and a practitioner of human complexity. Every conversation, every decision, every conflict becomes an opportunity to refine your perception. The more you observe, the more connections you draw between behavior and motive. You start to see patterns not just in individuals, but in human nature as a whole. Patterns that repeat across cultures, generations, and circumstances. This recognition reinforces your ability to understand people without being trapped by the illusions they project. Awareness of the games people play makes you immune to manipulation. Most people live as if the words they hear are the truth, as if the smiles they see are genuine, and as if the intentions others claim are as pure as they sound. They move through conversations and relationships without questioning the forces shaping them, unaware that in nearly every interaction there is a layer of strategy at play. These strategies are often subtle, woven into everyday behavior so naturally that they are invisible to those who are not paying attention. But once you develop the awareness to recognize them, you begin to see that much of human interaction is not spontaneous truth, but calculated influence. To become immune to manipulation, you must first acknowledge that manipulation is not always malicious. It exists on a spectrum from harmless persuasion to outright exploitation. A parent may manipulate their child for safety. A friend may nudge another to make a better choice. A company may dress their advertisement in comforting language to provoke trust. And in the darker forms, manipulation becomes a way to control, extract, or deceive for selfish gain. The key to immunity is not to treat all influence as evil, but to recognize it in all its forms so you can decide how to respond. This awareness begins with the ability to see patterns. Manipulation often follows predictable routes, appealing to emotion over reason, creating a sense of urgency, offering selective information, playing on guilt or fear, flattering to lower defenses, or framing situations in ways that benefit the manipulator while appearing fair. When you are unaware these tactics bypass your defenses, you respond to them without realizing you are being guided. But once you start recognizing them, they lose their power. You see the urgency for what it is, a way to prevent you from thinking too long. You hear the flattery for what it is, a way to open the door to influence. You recognize the guilt as a tool, not as a moral truth. Observation becomes your shield. Instead of reacting instantly to someone's request, you step back and analyze the interaction. What do they gain if I agree? What do they risk if I refuse? What emotional buttons are they pressing right now? You begin to notice how tone, timing, and body language are used to create compliance. You see that some people speak more softly when they want something, others more aggressively, and both are forms of steering you toward their desired outcome. This does not make you paranoid, it makes you deliberate. Another crucial part of immunity is emotional self-awareness. Manipulation works best when it can hijack your emotions, so knowing your own vulnerabilities is essential. If you crave approval, flattery will disarm you. If you fear conflict, guilt will trap you. If you hate uncertainty, urgency will force your hand. By understanding these soft spots, you stop giving others easy access to control your decisions. You learn to pause when you feel a sudden surge of emotion during an interaction, asking yourself whether that emotion is truly yours or if it has been placed there by someone else's design. Awareness also involves decoding the context around you. Words are never the full story. The setting, timing, and surrounding events often reveal more than the conversation itself. If a coworker suddenly befriends you before a major promotion is decided, the timing itself may speak louder than their words. If someone who has been distant suddenly becomes attentive when they need a favor, the change in behavior signals a strategic shift. Recognizing these patterns means you are no longer caught off guard when motives reveal themselves. The more you study the games people play, the more you understand that most manipulation relies on one assumption, that you will not question the frame of the interaction. The frame is the invisible boundary that defines what the conversation is about and what is possible within it. For example, if someone says, "If you really cared, you would help me," the frame is that helping them is the only way to prove you care. Most people accept this frame without realizing they could challenge it. Awareness allows you to see the frame and decide whether to accept, reject, or redefine it entirely. Over time, this awareness becomes instinctive. You can spot the small shifts in behavior that precede a request. You notice when someone plants an idea subtly in your mind days before they openly suggest it. You see when stories are told in ways that make you identify with a person's struggle, softening you for their eventual ask. You realize that silence is as much a tool as speaking. Some will withhold information to force you into guessing, others will give you too much to overwhelm you. This immunity does not mean you become cold or suspicious of everyone. Instead, you develop a calm clarity in your interactions. You can enjoy conversations, accept kindness, and even cooperate with others, but you do so with the awareness of where their interests lie and where yours may be at risk. You can agree without being coerced, refuse without feeling guilty, and walk away without second-guessing whether you were too harsh. Your decisions are no longer made in the fog of emotional manipulation, but in the clear light of conscious choice. It is important to understand that the most skilled manipulators are not always loud, aggressive, or obvious. Often they are charming, attentive, and generous at first. They build rapport, establish trust, and slowly shape the relationship to serve their needs. Without awareness, it is easy to mistake this charm for genuine alignment of values. But when you are attuned to subtle shifts, you notice when the dynamic starts to tilt, when your time, energy, or resources begin to flow more toward them than toward mutual benefit. Ultimately, awareness transforms your role in the social games around you. You stop being a passive participant moved by the strategies of others and become an active observer who can choose when, how, and whether to engage. You no longer fear the existence of manipulation because you see it clearly, and what is seen can be navigated. The fear and confusion that once made you easy to sway are replaced with grounded understanding. You can interact with the world knowing that while the games will never end, you are no longer an unknowing piece on someone else's board. Balance this awareness to avoid cynicism and unlock unstoppable potential. When you begin to see the hidden motives, the subtle manipulations and the unspoken truths that shape human behavior, there is a risk that your vision turns too sharp, cutting away not only illusions, but also trust. Awareness, when left unchecked, can harden into suspicion. The danger lies in allowing every action to be interpreted through a lens of distrust, where every kindness is a strategy, every compliment a calculated move, and every relationship a transaction. While this perspective may protect you from being deceived, it can also rob you of connection, warmth, and the ability to collaborate with others in good faith. The balance comes from remembering that complexity does not erase sincerity. A person can have self-interest and still care. They can act in ways that benefit themselves while also benefiting you. By holding both truths at once, you avoid the trap of believing the world is purely selfish or purely selfless. This balanced perspective keeps your awareness sharp without turning it into a weapon against your own ability to trust and build meaningful relationships. To achieve this balance, you must consciously separate vigilance from judgment. Vigilance observes without immediately labeling. It notes patterns, behaviors, and changes without jumping to moral conclusions. You may see that someone is trying to influence you, but instead of assuming malice, you consider their motives in context. Not all influence is manipulation. Not all persuasion is exploitation. Some is simply the natural way humans interact, negotiate, and align their needs. Another part of balance is knowing when to act on your awareness and when to simply store it as knowledge. Not every hidden motive needs to be confronted. Sometimes understanding is enough. The power of awareness lies not in exposing everything you see, but in using that vision to guide your own choices wisely. If you confront every perceived strategy, you create unnecessary conflict and risk isolating yourself. But if you act selectively, your awareness becomes a silent advantage, allowing you to navigate challenges with precision rather than aggression. Balancing awareness also means protecting your own mental and emotional state. If you spend too much time focusing on the darkness in human nature, it can overshadow the beauty, creativity, and cooperation that also exist. You must intentionally seek moments and relationships that reaffirm the possibility of trust and authenticity. This doesn't mean lowering your guard completely. It means allowing yourself to experience the good without letting the bad dominate your worldview. When this balance is achieved, your awareness becomes a source of strength rather than a burden. You see clearly, but you also move with calm confidence. You engage with people without fear of being blindsided, yet without closing yourself off from genuine connection. Your decisions are informed but not paranoid, strategic but not manipulative, grounded in reality but still open to possibility.